Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Mayanthi, I'm a qualified counsellor and I make videos all about how I became a counsellor and what you might want to know if you're looking to become a counsellor as well. So before I get into today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video if you enjoy this type of content, and I hope you find it helpful. So in this video I'm going to be addressing a question that came up in one of my comments, which is basically what to choose, Master of Social Work or Master of Counselling. So I'll just read out the full question here. Basically says, hi, thank you for your video. I have a couple of questions as I'm trying to decide between the Master of Counselling and the Master of Social Work. I think I know what I would like my job and lifestyle to look like. At the same time, I am being practical and thinking about my job prospects, and it seems the Master of Social Work offers more options. I'm curious about the placement for the counselling degree. I can't find any specifics on uni websites regarding how long it takes or how many hours were you required to do over what time. I see the Master of Social Work is 2 times 500 hours, which is wild, and I'm not sure how I will cope getting through that financially. Also, do you know anyone, or could you comment on the path of becoming a social worker and specializing in mental health to get the accreditation? Thank you in advance. So as this is quite a long question with a few little questions within it, I'm just going to have a bit of a chat with you and go through the question as I can. So in terms of deciding between the Master of Counselling and Master of Social Work, you've already mentioned that yes, there's probably going to be more job prospects if you do the Master of Social Work. And I completely agree. Being in the field and having worked in the field, I have found that people who've done the Master of Social Work do have more options, especially government jobs like in hospitals or other government organisations like Centrelink and places like that. There's a lot more social work jobs and opportunities for people who can be registered with the ASW, which is the Australian Association of Social Workers. So in general, as a realistic kind of recommendation, I would say doing the Master of Social Work will give you more options. And if you do the Master of Social Work, as I've mentioned in other videos, you can still work as a counsellor and do further certificates or training in counselling and work as a counsellor. So it does give you a few more options. And you're right in that the Master of Social Work, you have to complete 2 500-hour placements, which are quite large, and generally they're not paid placements. You can speak to the universities where you're thinking of studying and seeing if there are options to do paid placements. It might be that they don't find you the paid placement, but if you find it yourself, you might be able to choose that as an option. But generally you have to do 2 different placements. So the 500 hours you do over 2 semesters. I think it's one semester of 1 year, and then another semester in another year. So it's not a full year, just one after the other. So you wouldn't be able to do your placements in the same place either. They'd need to be different locations. So getting 2 paid placements might be very difficult. And you do need those 2 different types of experiences. It might be that you study the degree part-time, which will stretch those 500 hours over a longer period of time. But again, I really recommend speaking with the university that you're thinking of studying with and talking about your options, because some universities are more likely to help you figure out a way to work it out financially as well, because you're probably not the only one who would have that concern. I mean, there are some universities or some degrees where you just have to do what's set out, and if you can't afford it or if it doesn't work for your lifestyle, they can't really be flexible with that. But I would always recommend asking the question, talking to the universities, and just seeing what your options are. In terms of the Master of Counselling placement, when I did the Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy degree at Adelaide Uni, I had to do 2 placements and I had to achieve 200 hours of client contact. So what that means is I could be at a placement for 7 hours in the day, but only have 1 or 2 hours of client contact. So compared to social work, where they count the whole day, so being at a placement for 7 hours would be 7 hours of placement, But with counselling, you would be at the placement for 7 hours in the day. They would only count the actual client contact hours that you have. So you have to directly be with or in front of a client to count those hours. So we had to do 200 hours across 2 placements. So I was at placement for, I would say, a year and a bit to achieve 200 hours of client contact. I think they've realized that because you can't achieve it within the year, they have lessened the hours of client contact that you have to get. But it means once you finish the degree, you won't be eligible to register until you get the remaining client contact hours. Because to register with PACFA, you need 200 hours of client contact, which is why the degree had that requirement. But I think they've now changed the requirement for the actual degree, so you can still graduate without the full 200 hours, but in order to register with PACFA, you need to work a bit more and gain those extra hours that you didn't get within your placement. Which I think is fair, because if you can get a job straight after your degree, you should be able to earn those hours pretty quickly. And in saying that, that was the master's degree that I did. So that was the Masters of Counselling and Psychotherapy at Adelaide University. There are obviously different universities or different training providers that do the Master of Counselling degree, and they might have different requirements. So they might not have the 200 hours of client contact. They might just have, you know, do a 3-month or 6-month placement just to get some experience. But again, it may not lead you to being registered, and you may need to gain those hours after you finish. So it's up to you and what you think would be possible in your kind of situation and your lifestyle as to what you might place more value and importance on. So the other question around, do you know anyone, or could you comment on the path of becoming a social worker and specializing in mental health to get the accreditation? So I've looked into this, and this was something I was actually interested in doing as well, or potentially going down that path. But I did hear that it is quite intensive, and I've done a little bit of research, and through the ASW website, it does have the information to become an accredited mental health social worker. I have to say, working in the field, I have worked with mental health social workers, and it's quite interesting as to what they do. Like, for example, they can register themselves with a GP clinic and then go and work with clients that they get referred in the community. So you can kind of work for yourself as a kind of roaming mental health social worker, going into clients' homes and helping them with different aspects of their lives. So I thought that was quite an interesting role to do. But when looking into the process to become an accredited mental health social worker, it is quite intensive. It's not impossible. And if you're really interested and wanting to follow that path, then I do recommend it, especially at the start of your career. So the ASW have this website where you can read the steps to becoming an accredited mental health social worker. So I'll link the page down below because I don't think you can see while I'm showing you here, but it does go through the criteria for being registered, and it has different kind of study pathways that you can take as well. But it is quite intensive. Like, you have to complete 2 years full-time of social work experience after you finish your degree in a mental health setting within the last 5 years, totaling to a minimum of 3,360 hours. The ASW recognises that full-time employment equates to 35 hours per week for 48 hours per year. Sorry, for 48 weeks per year. You must be able to articulate your understanding and provide a case example of how your experience meets the ASW practice standards for mental health social workers 2014. And where applicable, you must demonstrate the use of focused psychological strategies within your case example from your mental health practice positions. And then you have to demonstrate at least 2 years full-time equivalent of post-qualifying supervision in mental health setting or field. So you've had to have supervision with your work as well. And that supervision has to meet the ASW standards. You have to meet the continuing professional development requirements. You have to demonstrate ability and knowledge of clinical mental health social work practice through case study activities. and you have to have verification of your applicant's skills and competencies in practice for each role you would like considered for your application. You also need to provide a CV or resume, a referee statement, and a position description of an official agency position description on an organization letterhead. So I think that might be related to if you're actually applying for a specific position as a mental health social worker. It also does have a note for those of you who might want to be self-employed in private practice, so you can have a read through that as well. But I would say this is the main source of truth to go to if you're looking for what you need to be accredited as a mental health social worker, because it is with the ASW. Because I know there's a lot of information out there and it's very confusing and you just don't know where to go, what to do. Again, the ASW might be somewhere you want to call and have a chat with them if you find the information on their website confusing. I always find that just talking to someone and asking and talking through those questions can be a lot more helpful, and you just feel like you get the answers that you need rather than feeling like you've read something and you're trying to figure out on your own. But in general, I think going down the Master of Social Work path is good if you're looking for a stable option, job opportunities, and good financial outcomes as well. The Master of Counselling, I do recommend it. I think it was a great degree. I really enjoyed doing it. But in terms of opportunities after that, I had to go looking a little deeper, and getting the jobs that I did, I think, were based on other things about my kind of life and experience rather than having studied the Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy. But I think if you study the Master of Social Work, people do consider that a bit more recognised, and it is quite regulated through the ASW, so it's a bit more kind of well known for what it is as well. So I hope that helped answer your question. As I said earlier, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up. And feel free to share the video with anyone else you might think might find it useful or is looking to become a counsellor as well. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.